Hello, my name is Kiriath, and today we are going to talk about this very excessively pixelated picture, which was sent to me on Twitter from Alfarius, which is excellent, and I love the fact that you have that handle on Twitter, mostly because it makes this all the more fun in terms of propaganda, real or not real, who knows, that's where it came from. Actually, it came from 40kg, which I'm not familiar with, but there you go. So, this is, as you can see, a very pixelated photo of some Primaris stuff. Specifically, there is stuff in here that looks rather like bikes and some sort of flyer. I did think speeder, maybe like a land speeder equivalent, but then again, it's pretty bulky, it's pretty big, although it's kind of hard to tell scale because it's so massively pixelated. Which, I think let's just address that first. Let's start out with that. See, this is not the result of someone taking a photo with a terrible phone. That's not what happens with that. It's not one of those blurry, low-light images that we see so often when it comes to leaks. This is actually a fairly decent picture of what could probably, judging by the... it's a bit hard to tell because of how pixelated it is, but judging by the colour saturation and stuff, this to me looks like a picture from... like a picture of a picture. It looks like a photo of a page that has this on it. Although, as I say, the pixelation does make it a little bit tricky to tell. The thing is, the pixelation is not what I would describe as natural pixelation to me. That doesn't look particularly natural. That looks like something that's been thrown into Photoshop and hit with the pixelate filter. It could be as a result of it being a tiny picture and then blown up massively. That could also be it, but it could also be a quick Photoshop job. The actual dimensions of this thing... It's not big, but the picture that it first came from would have to be pretty damn minute. This is 391 by 363. I've blown up a bit on the in the video just so you can see it better. Better being a relative term, because how do you see that better? But yeah, it could be a very convincing troll. It could be an actual kind of leaked image designed to build up hype, which, to be honest, would not be beyond the bounds of possibility. In fact, if you're going to get people talking, something like this is a good way to do it, as evidenced by the fact that we're talking about it right now. Now, of course, it's hard to make out exactly what's in here. We can clearly see that there's a repulsor. Now, I don't think it's the execution, I think it's the normal one. There's the impulsor that's off to the bottom right, as you're looking at the screen, so it would technically be you know what I mean. There's obviously a redemption in the background, and there's some intercessors, but in the very centre of this image is this weird Landspeeder-esque vehicle, which could either be a flyer, or it could be a Landspeeder equivalent, or a kind of halfway point between the two. It's clearly got grav plates on the bottom. As far as I can see from the front of that, the grav plates could sort of roughly match what you see on the impulsor and the repulsor, which you'd expect because there's a standard design across all of this stuff. The back end, it looks more Landspeeder-y than anything else. It's got a hint of Stormwolf about it, but that's just because of the small wings at the back. It could be a Photoshop thing where it's like half of one vehicle has been stuck on the back of another, but I don't know. I don't know that it is, because frankly the stuff that's in here, this speeder type thing, and of course the bikes in the top right, are things that I would expect to see eventually for Primaris anyway. They don't strike me as being unusual or things that there would be much point in faking, to be honest, because these are things that I would assume we'd see sooner rather than later regardless. And I guess, if you're going to do a big push for, say, Dark Angels in the form of the next Psychic Awakening book, having new bikes to go with Ravenwing would be quite nice. Although, admittedly, that would mean the White Scots kind of got left out in the cold. But, that's just how these things work, isn't it? So, for me personally, there is nothing in here that strikes me as being completely and utterly nonsensical. Like, the idea of a Primaris Flyer or a Primaris Landspeeder equivalent makes absolute sense. I'd be very surprised if we didn't see those at some point. The scale of it makes me think that it is closer to a Landspeeder type vehicle, although, having said that, scale is all over the place when it comes to 40k vehicles, let's be honest. You can clearly see there's two guys in it. It looks like an open cockpit job. There's, I believe, missile launchers on the back, possibly two, or maybe just one. As I say, the pixelation makes it incredibly difficult to actually make out proper details, but you can clearly see the fact there's grav plates and all that stuff on the bottom. So, yeah, pretty reasonable, and something you'd expect to see. The bikes are actually the more interesting thing for me, because the shape of them is a bit off. If you look at a current Space Marine bike, the rider is quite clearly seated in the middle. So you've got like a rise in the centre where the rider sits. The silhouette is kind of thin, big in the middle, and then thin on the other end. These don't match that. Those look very much to me like two-person bikes. It looks as though there's someone sitting on the back of it and someone sitting on the front of it. Really, it's not the front, but the middle. I mean, it's a little bit difficult to tell, and I'm not sure how best to kind of demonstrate. But to me, it kind of looks like they're not the typical sort of setup that we've seen before. It really does genuinely look to me as though there is, if not another Space Marine on the back, then some sort of platform or something on the back, maybe? Because if you look, there is a big chunk of blue over the back wheel. And if you look at the intercessors that are also in this picture, just about the pixels of the intercessors that are in this picture, there's you can see where the shoulder pad is due to the emblem that's on it. Now, the bike that's closest to the camera, you can clearly see that there is a similar setup in terms of shoulder pad, but it's at the very back of the bike. Now, the thing is, you can't actually see the shoulder pad of the person in the middle of the bike, which, you know, the rider/driver, so that's the only thing throwing me off. But they do look a little bit interesting. It'd be interesting to see what setup they actually have, because they don't look typical to what we currently have in terms of Space Marine bikes. There's definitely a different weight distribution going on there that could suggest something kind of interesting. But yeah, this is the thing. This is what has been going everywhere, all over Twitter and a load of other places. I've got so many messages about this. I thought we'd take a look at it and present it as is, give you my thoughts, and then see what you guys think as well, because, you know, that's the whole point, and I would be curious to know whether you think this is real, whether this is fake. I mean, it seems like a very, in a weird way, it seems like a very boring thing to fake, because it's like, a speeder and bikes, how very unlikely for Primaris. Not really. I mean, I'm assuming we'd see them sooner rather than later anyway. As with any Primaris stuff, I would assume we'd see them sooner rather than later, because they've been steadily bringing stuff out since the inception of these things. So, content-wise, it makes total sense. It's whether you think this image is legitimate in and of itself, and whether you... I mean, the big question, I guess, is the center vehicle, whether you think it's a speeder, whether you think it's a full-on flyer, what you think the context of that actually is. I mean, the bikes most likely are just bikes, even if there is an interesting setup in terms of there being 2 Marines per bike, it's still just a bike. That center thing is the thing that I'm most curious about. So, yeah, let me know what you think of all of that pixelated goodness in the comments down below. Feel free to click all the things. Patreon, video, subscribe, all that stuff. Click it if you like it, don't click it if you don't want to. And as always, there's an affiliate link to Element Games in the description, where you can get a bunch of stuff for way cheaper than buying it from Games Workshop, and if you buy something through that link, I get something for sending you that way. 10% goes to charity. It's a nice way to support the channel without any extra effort, because you're going to buy all that shit anyway, let's be honest. So yeah, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.